What's up, everybody? This is Coach Chris with Beyond Strength Performance Nova here in Dulles, Virginia. And in this week's video, we're going to talk about progressing the bent over row. So the first thing you might be asking is, what in the heck is a bent over row? And just go ahead and look. Look right here. Let's watch. Okay. So if you had to kind of describe this in parts, I think it would be safe to say that it's a hinge, which is if we push on the point of our hips, push them backwards with a relatively vertical shin. If our arms were to hang straight down, they'd run somewhere parallel to our shins. It's not our legs straight and our arms wind up way out in front. It's sitting our butt back so that our arms wind up right in front of our shins. From here, whether we're using a barbell or dumbbells, whatever implement we're using, they would hang straight down. We'd go from this good hinge position and we would row up and down, right? Locking in that position. Now, rather simple movement from the outside looking in, but there's a lot of common mistakes that we see here. Most of these mistakes have to do with losing position to try and move the load. Sometimes that just means we're going too heavy. Other times it means that we don't have the core strength to keep our hinge locked in during that row, okay? So what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about using pattern assistance, which is a part of the 4x4 matrix, to provide context of where we should be locked into during the bent over row. And the tool that we're going to use for pattern assistance is the bench. So if you've been a weightlifter, if you've worked out, you've probably seen chest supported rows, but we're going to show a little different take on the chest supported row today that again is going to provide context to help understand where you should be position wise during a hinge. So traditionally when we see chest supported rows, a lot of times people will just lay down on the bench and kick their legs back and they knock out rows from here. And that's great. That's a way that we can load our rows a little bit heavier and not have to worry about that core strength. But remember, we're using this as a pattern assistance to build to a full bent over row. So the way that we are going to use a chest supported row is to set my dumbbells right here on the end. And I'm going to hinge into the position and I'm going to use the bench to help me lock in where I want to be. So I'm going to stand up pretty high on this bench. Remember, when we were back here, my legs are behind me. I'm going to start standing up. I'm going to walk way out here to the end. The dumbbells are basically straight down between my hips. I'm going to hinge back, and I'm not going to let all my weight go into this bench. I'm going to hinge back and just lightly touch my chest to the bench. I can stand up out of this position at any time. In terms of where my feet go, I'm basically matching the angle that my feet are turned out to the angle of my femur. So if I run my forearm down my thigh, I just turn those puppies out, and that's probably going to feel the best on my hips, okay? So I'm here, I'm standing up, I hinge back. First I just check, does this feel like a strong position that I can move in and out of? If it does, good. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my dumbbells. Again, I'm going to do that same thing. Can I stand up out of this position? I'm not laying all my weight into the bench. It's just there to let me know this is where I should be. Now we're just going to do some rows. Pull up, row into the bench. Right? Same thing. I can still stand up out of that. I'm not smashing my chest down into the bench. Okay? So that's using the bench to do a different take on the chest supported row to again build towards the full bent over row. It's still providing a good bit of assistance, a good bit of feedback with all that contact surface. So what we do is we're going to take away some of that. We progress to what we've called the head supported row, but to be honest with you, in our staff meeting this week we talked about getting rid of that name because it sends the wrong message. It says, boom, my head is keeping me from falling over, which is not at all what it is. Like the chest supported row, I'm going to lightly touch my head against the bench for feedback to know this is a pretty good position for my hinge. So first thing you'll notice is that for chest supported, for me, I'm 5'9", I had it down at about this angle, which says it's 20 degrees. To go to head supported, if you think about it, my chest is down here, my head is up here. I got to move this thing up a little bit. So now, whenever I hinge back, my head's against this thing, and it's the same idea. I can stand up out of it. If I'm getting like a red mark on my forehead from leaning into this bench, I'm going entirely too hard. I'm not really supporting my head on here. It's just for feedback. Sorry if I'm saying that a lot. Just want to make sure that no one mistakes what we're saying here. So Same idea. We're going to go ahead and set up. Because I used the sumo stance there, I'm going to continue with the sumo stance here. You don't have to do a sumo stance. This is really going to come down to preference of where you feel best in your hinge. If you pull sumo, and that's where you feel the strongest, you're probably going to feel pretty good doing your bent over rows from a sumo stance. If you pull conventional, same thing. You're probably going to feel pretty good from a conventional stance. I'm just going to continue to show sumo here. So, same thing. I'm going to set up. I'm going to run my arm down my femur. I'm going to match my feet to that angle. I'm going to hinge back and find the bench with my head, kind of get centered, make sure everything feels good from there. Then the same idea. I'm happy with where my feet are. I'm going to go ahead, grab a hold of my dumbbells, and I'm going to knock out my rows from here. Right? Again, I can come off the bench, but I'm using the bench to keep one of the most common mistakes that we see happen, which is this. People are doing a bent over row and they go, and they stand up away from the bench. By just lightly keeping my head against the bench, it helps me to understand where I am in space, I'm staying locked in, and we're doing a true, strict bent over row from there. Right? Once we have that locked in, I mean, we really are doing the full bent over row, but we can remove the pattern assistance of the bench. So now, same idea. I'm standing over my dumbbells, check, make sure I'm happy with where I'm at, looks pretty good. Standing up tall, I'm going to hinge my hips back, grab a hold of my dumbbells, set my position. Everything should stay locked in, right? So I knock out my rows. If I had that head support there still, I should be staying right against the bench, okay? So this is how we use chest-supported row, what we're currently calling head-supported, but we need to come up with a better name, and building to the full standing bent over row, okay? So try this out in your own training. If you have any questions, comments, concerns about this stuff, ask away. Put questions in the comments here, and we'll get an answer for you. I'm way too winded from just doing a couple bent over rows, so I think I should go rest now. But again, this is Coach Chris with Beyond Strength Performance Nova, and we'll talk soon. Take care.